What if I told you that suddenly finding out there are 1,000 single people right in your neighborhood is the exact reason you're going to delete your dating app tonight?
Yeah, it sounds completely backward, right?
It really does. I'm your host, and today we're jumping into a wild topic. Have you ever found yourself, endlessly swiping, just staring at your phone, surrounded by this seemingly infinite digital crowd?
Right, the endless scroll.
Exactly. And yet somehow ending up with fewer actual matches and feeling, I don't know, more single than ever. It is the ultimate modern paradox.
It really is a paradox. I'm the resident expert today, and these platforms basically promise this frictionless romantic utopia, right? Like your perfect match is always just a thumb swipe away.
Just one more swipe.
Exactly. But when you look at the data, the lived reality for a massive portion of users is just profound exhaustion and surprisingly little romance. The platform architecture itself actually works against the user's stated goals.
And that is exactly what we're exploring in today's deep dive. We're looking at 4 fascinating research papers that investigate the hidden psychological costs of dating apps.
Yeah, we've got a fantastic stack of sources today.
We really do. We're going to unpack why having vastly more options actually leads to fewer choices, how the mechanics of rapid-fire swiping fundamentally rewrite your self-esteem, and why feeling totally exhausted pushes you to surrender your love life to a black box mathematical algorithm.
What's really cool about these papers is that they attack the problem using entirely different methodologies. We're looking at causal evidence from a real-world field experiment on an actual live dating app.
Which is rare, right?
Super rare. And we also have a highly controlled lab experiment to isolate user behavior, plus a longitudinal study that tracks real users over multiple months to see how their mental states evolve.
Okay, let's unpack this from the very beginning. Let's start with the literal first millisecond you open one of these apps.
Right, the first impression.
You're immediately confronted with this overarching perception of how many potential partners, like how many fish in the sea, are actually out there waiting for you.
And that perceived dating pool is incredibly influential, which brings us to our first source. Researcher Jessica Fong partnered directly with a mobile dating app to run a field experiment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she wanted to test how users alter their behavior when they are forced to confront the actual quantifiable size of their romantic market.
Because usually you have no idea. You just open the app in a big city and assume there's a massive pool of people, but the app doesn't, give you a live head count.
Right, users generally just operate on vague assumptions. So Fawn introduced this really clever intervention. For the treatment group, the moment they opened the app, they were hit with a pop-up message.
Like an alert.
Exactly. And it stated a hard number for the users nearby. It would say something like, there are at least 588 men and 592 women nearby.
Whoa.
Yeah. Suddenly, the ambiguous dating pool becomes a stark, concrete reality.
I mean, honestly, that sounds incredibly overwhelming. If I walked into a physical room and someone handed me a clipboard saying I had to evaluate 500 single people in my demographic, I think I would just turn around and walk out the door.
That instinct to run away is deeply rooted in human cognition. And it's exactly what the data reflected. Showing users a larger market size actually deterred them from participating in the app.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they were significantly less likely to even start the searching process compared to users who didn't see the numbers at all.
Wait, I really want to understand the mechanism here. Why does knowing there's an abundance of potential partners make you less likely to try? I mean, if you're hungry and someone tells you there's a massive buffet next door, you don't usually say, never mind, I'll starve.
Right, but the difference lies in what economists call search costs and what psychologists call cognitive load. Our brains did not evolve to evaluate hundreds of potential mates simultaneously. When confronted with 500 options, the brain immediately calculates the staggering mental energy required to, filter, evaluate, and communicate with that volume of people.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, the anticipated cognitive burden is so heavy that your brain simply goes into avoidance mode.
Ah, so it's a processing issue. It kind of reminds me of walking into a massive warehouse-style grocery store looking for cereal.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. Like when I see 300 different boxes, the sheer mental energy required to read the nutrition labels, compare the prices, and weigh the flavor profiles feels so daunting that I might just abandon the cart and leave.
Let's actually take that cereal analogy a step further to really understand the how of it. It isn't just about the physical walking down the aisle, it's about your working memory.
Like a computer.
Exactly like computer RAM. When you try to hold the variables of 300 cereal boxes or 500 human profiles in your head at once, your RAM maxes out.
The system crashes.
The system crashes, you retreat to save mental energy. But the study found an interesting secondary effect for the users who did decide to push through the overwhelm and stay on the app.
I'm guessing if they stay, their behavior changes entirely.
It shifts dramatically. When users who saw the large market size decided to participate anyway, they became significantly more selective.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they were vividly aware of the massive inventory, they raised their standards, holding out for a much higher match value.
You know, that tracks perfectly. If I force myself to stay in that massive cereal aisle, I am absolutely refusing to settle.
Right.
Like, I am only walking out of there with the most perfect, organically sourced, artisanal cereal ever created. If there are 500 options, I assume a flawless one must exist in there somewhere.
You've hit on the illusion of the perfect match, but Fong's experiment also isolated a second variable, which was competition size.
Okay, what's the difference there?
So while the market size is the number of potential partners you want to date, the competition size is the number of your rivals.
Oh, I see.
Right. So if the pop-up indicated a large number of rivals, say an unusually high number of other people of your own gender competing for those same matches, the users actually became less selective.
That is fascinating. So the abundance mindset flips into a scarcity mindset.
Exactly.
The moment you perceive the competition's fierce, the fear of getting boxed out takes over, and suddenly you're willing to lower your standards just to secure a match.
It is a brilliant demonstration of how merely being aware of a platform's scale totally rewires your baseline expectations before you even look at a single photograph.
Wow.
It really confirms the theory of choice overload in a live, high-stakes environment.
Okay, so the sheer size of the crowd changes how our brains operate from second one.
Yeah.
But let's look at the actual user experience. What happens to that mental RAM when we move past the pop-up and start sorting through those faces one by one?
We can see exactly what happens under the hood thanks to our second source. A team of researchers led by Thomas designed a highly controlled lab experiment to look specifically at the mechanics of the swipe. They used a factorial design, having undergraduate students evaluate mock dating app profiles under different constraints.
And for anyone who might be rusty on research methods, a factorial experiment just means they aren't testing one thing in isolation, right?
Right.
They're testing multiple variables at the same time to see how they collide and interact with each other.
That is a great way to summarize it. In this case, the first variable they manipulated was the sheer volume of profiles.
And how many did they show them?
They split the students into groups who had to evaluate either 11 profiles, 31 profiles, or a massive 91 profiles. And the researchers tracked the acceptance rate. So how often the users swiped right to say yes.
I would logically assume that looking at 91 people yields significantly more total matches than looking at 11 people, simply by virtue of volume. I mean, more lottery tickets, more winners.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But the data tells a completely different story. The researchers found that forcing users to evaluate more profiles actually decreased their acceptance rate.
Wait, decreased it?
Yeah. When the students evaluated just 11 profiles, they said yes about 24% of the time. But when they had to slog through 91 profiles, their acceptance rate plummeted to 17%.
Why does the brain do that? If you're looking at more people, you should mathematically find more people you like. Why does the acceptance rate drop so sharply?
It comes back to cognitive load again, and something called partner choice overload.
Partner choice overload.
Right. When you are exposed to an overwhelming abundance of choices, the complex decision-making task of evaluating long-term human compatibility becomes computationally impossible for your brain to sustain.
It's just too much math.
Exactly. So to cope with the overload, your brain defaults to the easiest possible heuristic, which is rejection. Finding a single flaw is cognitively much easier than evaluating a whole person.
So rapid-fire swiping effectively turns you into this hypercritical reality show judge.
Pretty much.
Instead of looking for a connection, you're just scanning for disqualifiers, like, oh, his shoe is slightly scuffed in picture 3, or, she used the wrong form of there in her bio.
Right, exactly.
You just reject them instantly to clear the screen and reduce your mental burden.
The brain is just trying to clear the backlog. But the Thomas study went deeper by manipulating that second variable in their factorial design, which was how people made those decisions.
Okay, so the state of mind they were in.
Yes. They split the users into two distinct psychological modes. The first was assessment mode, where users were instructed to be highly critical, weigh the pros and cons, and make careful, defensible choices.
And what was the alternative to being
Ooh.
careful and critical?
The alternative was locomotion mode.
Locomotion,
Yeah.
like moving fast.
Exactly. Users in this group were told to decide intuitively, dynamically, and to go as incredibly fast as possible using only their gut instinct.
Which, I mean, basically sounds like how these apps are actually used in the wild.
Totally.
You're sitting on your couch on a Tuesday night, half watching a movie, just swiping left and right at the speed of light.
It perfectly mimics the gamified architecture of modern platforms, and the results here were deeply unsettling. Swiping rapidly and intuitively in locomotion mode resulted in users reporting significantly lower self-esteem.
Lower self-esteem.
Yeah, and a lower perceived mate value of themselves. And remarkably, this self-esteem drop occurred even for participants who were already in committed long-term relationships outside the lab.
I really need to pause on this because it feels profound. I understand why evaluating mock profiles rapidly might make you misjudge them.
Right.
But why on earth would judging someone else make you feel worse about yourself? What is the psychological mechanism there?
It has to do with how the human brain processes objectification and social comparison. When you evaluate a complex human being in a fraction of a second, you are fundamentally stripping away their humanity.
Right, you're treating them like a product.
Exactly. You are reducing them to a two-dimensional commodity, no different than a pair of shoes online. But the brain is highly associative. The moment you commodify others, a subconscious mirror reflects that action back onto you.
Oh, wow. So you implicitly realize, wait, if I am reducing these people to disposable objects in half a second, everyone else out there is doing the exact same thing to me.
Exactly. You internalize the realization that you are just another product on the digital shelf.
That is brutal.
It is. To maintain that rapid processing speed, your brain basically has to shut down its empathy centers. And the consequence of turning off that empathy to swipe faster is that you leave the app feeling dehumanized and deeply insecure about your own worth.
That is incredibly heavy. It really shatters the illusion that swiping is just a harmless, frictionless game.
It's not harmless at
The
all.
very act of processing humans at that speed carries a hidden psychological tax that you pay with your own self-worth, which naturally begs a massive question.
What's that?
If rapid swiping makes us feel commodified, lowers our self-esteem, and literally causes us to reject more people, why do we keep doing it until we're completely burned out?
For the answer to that, we turn to our third piece of evidence. A team of researchers, Binder, Stevick, and Mathis, conducted a major longitudinal panel study on young adults.
Okay, longitudinal.
And the longitudinal aspect is critical here. Unlike a cross-sectional study that just takes a single snapshot in time, a longitudinal study tracks the same individuals over multiple time periods.
Like over several months.
In this case, 2 waves separated by a month.
And tracking the same people over time is really the only way to establish the direction of the pipeline, right?
Exactly.
Because if you just survey people once, you might see that people who swipe a lot are also very tired. But you don't know if the swiping caused the tiredness or if they are swiping because they're tired.
You've highlighted the exact blind spot of most app research. By tracking them over time, these researchers could see what specific feelings or behaviors at time 1 predicted an outcome at time 2.
So what were they looking at?
They focused heavily on 2 phenomena. First, partner choice FOMO, the agonizing fear of missing out on a better match. And second, decision fatigue, which is that bone-deep exhaustion from constant evaluation.
You know, I want to challenge the premise here for a second.
Sure.
Doesn't the physical volume of swiping directly cause the fatigue? Like if you're swiping 500 times a day, isn't it just the mechanical repetition of making hundreds of micro decisions that drains your battery?
The researchers assumed the exact same thing.
Oh, really?
But the longitudinal data revealed a massive surprise. Excessive swiping volume at time 1 did not predict decision fatigue at time 2.
Wait, so the physical repetition wasn't the culprit?
Nope. Instead, it was the FOMO at time 1 that directly predicted the profound decision fatigue a month later.
That is wild. So the actual thumb movement and the visual processing aren't what burns you out.
The physical action is almost irrelevant. What drains your cognitive battery is the psychological agony of the counterfactual.
The counterfactual.
Yeah, when you are presented with an illusion of infinite choice, your brain shifts from a satisficing mindset, like finding someone who makes you happy, to a maximizing mindset, where you demand the absolute best possible option in existence.
Which means every single choice you make feels like a potential trap.
Exactly.
If you say yes to someone, your brain immediately starts spinning its wheels, whispering, but what if the literal perfect person is just 3 swipes away?
Yeah.
Did I just settle?
That constant state of what if requires an immense amount of executive function. You're never actually finalizing a decision. You are just keeping hundreds of psychological tabs open in your brain.
But a browser with way too many windows open.
Yes. That sustained fear of making the wrong choice is what ultimately causes the profound fatigue.
Let's synthesize all of this, because the picture it paints of the user experience is incredibly intense. You open the app and get hit with choice overload just from the market size.
Right.
You start rapid-fire swiping to cope, which lowers your self-esteem and makes you reject people unfairly.
Yeah.
And the entire time, your brain is paralyzed by the fear of missing out, which completely exhausts your cognitive RAM. You are fatigued, you feel commodified, and you're still single.
Still single.
Where does an overwhelmed user go from there?
They look for an exit strategy. They look for something else to carry the burden of choice.
Something to take the wheel.
Exactly. And our fourth piece of research, which builds on this exact same longitudinal data, shows us exactly where they turn. They surrender to the machine.
Wow.
They develop what researchers call algorithmic trust.
Algorithmic trust.
Mm-hmm.
That is the belief that a black box line of mathematical code actually understands human attraction better than you do. Yeah. And that it can successfully pair you up if you just let it take over.
This study found a very clear pipeline here. Users who reported high levels of excessive swiping and severe decision fatigue at time 1 showed significantly higher levels of trust in the dating app's algorithm at time 2.
So the more exhausted they became, the more they believed the machine possessed some magical matchmaking insight.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense when you frame it as cognitive offloading.
Right.
It is exactly like what happens at midnight on a Friday when you're too tired to figure out what movie to watch on Netflix.
Oh, perfect example.
You scroll for 20 minutes, the decision fatigue sets in, your brain just gives up, and you blindly click whatever the algorithm put in the top 10 trending row.
Yep.
You don't actually believe it's the best movie. You are just so burned out by the illusion of infinite choice that you outsource your intuition to a piece of code.
It is a psychological band-aid.
Uh,
By trusting the algorithm, the user gets to say, I am no longer responsible for this impossible decision. The math knows best.
wow.
It temporarily relieves the crushing weight of the FOMO, but the longitudinal data reveals the tragedy of this coping mechanism.
Oh no, don't tell me it doesn't work. Does surrendering to the algorithm actually reduce their fatigue?
The researchers tested for a reciprocal effect. They wanted to see if trusting the algorithm at time 1 led to less fatigue or less excessive swiping at time 2. The data showed absolutely no reciprocal effect.
So it's a completely empty promise.
The algorithm offers no cure. Trusting the machine didn't fix their burnout, and it didn't stop their excessive swiping.
Just a band-aid.
Just a temporary illusion of relief that kept them engaged with the platform, while the underlying cycle of overload and exhaustion just continued unabated.
That is a brutally ironic loop. You're trusting the app to save you from the exhaustion that the app's own architecture created in the first place.
You're just trapped in the machinery.
Jeez.
Now, as sweeping and dramatic as that sounds, we do have to ground this discussion in the limitations of the science. We can't treat these findings as universal laws of human romance without acknowledging the boundaries of the research.
Always. Keep us honest. What are the blind spots here?
Well, first, with Fong's field experiment on market size, we have to remember the researchers only manipulated the user's beliefs about the market size via a pop-up.
Oh, right. They didn't magically add 500 people to the city.
Exactly. They didn't alter the actual physical supply of people. Second, the Thomas experiment utilized mock profiles on college undergraduates in a lab setting.
Ah, so no real stakes.
Right. The users knew their rapid-fire swiping had no real-world romantic consequences, which likely makes it much easier to be ruthless than if you were looking at real potential dates.
That's a fair caveat. It is much easier to objectify a picture when you know there isn't a breathing human on the other side of the screen hoping for a connection.
And finally, the binder longitudinal data focused specifically on young adults in Germany.
Okay.
We can't definitively claim that a 50-year-old divorcee in Tokyo or a 30-year-old in New York interacts with these platform affordances in the exact same way. Different demographics might deploy entirely different coping mechanisms.
Those are important nuances to keep in mind. But when you step back and look at the aggregate weight of these 4 studies, a very sobering picture emerges for anyone navigating modern romance.
It really does.
Dating apps market themselves on the premise of endless abundance. But the evidence clearly demonstrates that this sheer abundance raises our cognitive search costs and deters us from engaging.
Right.
And if we force ourselves to engage, processing all those faces overloads our mental RAM, driving down our acceptance rates.
Yeah.
Swiping rapidly forces us to objectify others, which subconsciously degrades our own self-worth. And ultimately, the relentless fear of missing out exhausts us so thoroughly that we blindly hand over our romantic autonomy to an algorithm just to escape the pressure.
It is a continuous cycle of cognitive overload, self-devaluation, and profound fatigue.
Yeah.
The user is desperately trying to find a needle in a haystack, and the platform's response is to just keep dumping more hay on top of them.
Which brings us directly back to the title of today's deep dive: Swipe More, Choose Less.
Exactly.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over based on the psychological mechanisms we've unpacked today.
Let's hear it.
We know that these algorithms are fundamentally optimized for one primary business objective: keeping user engagement incredibly high so you never leave the platform.
Right.
And we now know from the science that more swiping and infinite choices actively degrade your ability to actually choose someone and feel confident about it.
Yeah.
So, is it possible that a perfect matching algorithm isn't actually designed to help you choose better at all?
Oh, wow.
What if its true purpose is simply to perfectly calibrate your fatigue, giving you just enough hope to keep searching, but never quite enough clarity to actually choose?